Hey everybody, it's Jason Blaha here, and I had a subscriber ask a question. He basically wants to know what is the best way he should eat on his days off when trying to gain muscle mass in order to try to minimize fat gain. And the reason he's asked is because muscles don't grow that long from training. They only grow for about 24 to 48 hours after you train them. What in the heck are you supposed to do on your days off from training to help with all this so that you don't gain much body fat? So let me put on my +5 hat of weaponsmithing, work on skilling up my crafting a little bit, and let's talk about this. All right, first of all, brother, you are probably overthinking this for the average person. Now, I understand that people who are competing in things where a 1% advantage actually matters, that getting timing and everything perfect can be a big deal because you're talking about trying to get a 0.5% advantage in a competitive environment. For people who are just chasing body composition for vanity reasons, for fun, for overall health and fitness, worrying about stuff like this probably isn't that important. Not saying it doesn't matter, but it's unlikely to make a duff of a difference for you to personally or people around you to notice. And that's the big deal. You need to prioritize your resources as far as what you're doing with everything. Now, that being said, minimizing fat gain. Honestly, meal timing and what days you eat what is not going to be a major factor there. The overwhelming bulk of the data tells us that your fat gain is a product of not necessarily just your daily, but your weekly and monthly caloric excess. All right, that's how you gain body fat, by chronically overeating calories. All right, chronically overeating calories. And we know the number one factor is your total caloric intake versus your caloric output. All right, that is the biggest factor, hands down. Every top expert in the world agrees. Composition of your diet is number two, but calories are way up here. Like your caloric intake accounts for probably 80% of your fat gain. All right, at least as far as the importance of it. It accounts for all of it, but what we mean is you could probably get a little wiggle room at the same calories, meaning gaining an ounce of fat over a given number of days versus like 80% of an ounce of fat. Things like composition of your diet, your carbs, fat, protein, because that can affect things like fat storage, muscle growth, all of that stuff. That gives you a little bit of wiggle room there. And then timing is way down there, maybe accounts for 1 to 2% of the difference. In other words, meal timing accounts for very, very little, no noticeable amount really, in terms of fat gain. So the number one thing that you could be doing to minimize your fat gain is to just not overeat many calories. Eat just enough calories to fuel your muscle growth, to fuel your recovery, fuel your training. You want to minimize fat gain, don't go gaining 5 pounds a month, all right? Because you can't gain more than a pound or two of muscle in a month, and that's if you're in your first year. So, if you're gaining 5 pounds every month, it's mostly fat. You're mostly gaining fat. So you need to keep your caloric intake reeled in. That's all you can really do. What I would say to you, though, if you're going to eat any given number of calories and you're trying to gain muscle mass, you need to focus not on the fat gaining in, because you just keep your calories in check for that, but focus upon what's going to give you the best recovery and the best training energy. All right? That's what's going to matter. And you know what? Micromanaging it from day to day is only going to matter a little bit. It's not going to make a huge difference. Again, don't major in the minors. Don't major in the minors. People tend to spend 80% of their efforts worrying about things that only account for about 20% of their progress. They have a bad habit of doing that. First of all, make sure that you're on a sound training program. And I've discussed that a lot. You know what I mean if you watch my videos in general. But as far as timing things goes, the question I would ask you is, what's your training look like? Are you really taking days off from training? Meaning, all right, resistance training, weight training, yeah, for most people, 3 to 4 days a week is going to be ideal. But you shouldn't be sedentary on your off days. You aren't doing some sort of low-intensity cardio, some type of conditioning work, something every single day. I mean, I tell most people you should be doing cardio of some type 7 days a week. I don't care what your goals are. It's good for your health. It's good for your recovery. It's all around good for you to be doing cardio of some type every day. And then whatever conditioning work, GPP, whatever else you're doing, that stuff all needs to be in there. When I tell people to lift weights full body 3 days a week, I don't mean they sit on their ass the other 4 days. I'm not saying not to be active. I hope you're doing cardio and other stuff. It's not just about lifting in the weight room. So when you factor that in, do you really have off days from training? The other thing you've got to look at, this is where people really mess up micromanaging stuff. Do you plan on growing on your days off from training? I mean, if you're lifting weights 3 or 4 days a week, you're probably growing on most of your off days also. You need calories. You need food to facilitate that growth. Also, your training sessions, the food that you eat even the evening before you train, so if you're only lifting 3 days a week, what you eat the days before you train will affect your performance in the gym. So you need to be eating for recovery, you need to be eating for growth, and the other thing you've got to consider, everyone seems to think their digestion works on a 24-hour cycle. You digest and absorb most of the food on the day that you eat it, but not all of it, and slower digesting foods like fats and proteins can sometimes take you up to 72 hours to fully extract all the calories and nutrition from. So when you think about it from that perspective, worrying about micromanaging days off from training, yeah, lots of people do it. They do it to add complexity to their diet. They do it to add complexity to their coaching services to make it sound like they're doing something special for you, that they have some special structured diet, but there's no truth to that. The truth is, you're still digesting some of your food and absorbing it that you ate yesterday right now, even here in the evening. All right, you're still using some of it. The days that you eat it isn't 100% important there. It really isn't. But what I would say, if you're going to time things, all right, there's no need for you to eat more or less calories on days off and days on from training, because you need food for recovery after you train, and then you need food to replenish your glycogen before you train again. And the way I would look at it, obviously, you don't want to train fasted, but you want to eat just enough food before you train, enough protein and enough carbs to fuel your training without bogging down your digestive system. And if your body's having to digest, particularly your stomach has to do a lot of gastric emptying during your training, it can impact your performance. It can even make you sick. It can make you throw up when you train. When you see people puking from squatting, it's because they ate too much before they squat. But the food you ate the evening before won't affect that. That's going to tend to hit your muscle glycogen. So that needs to be your big focus before training days. Getting enough extra carbs in without creating a big caloric surplus could probably be helpful for your training the next day as far as getting the best workouts in possible. So if you lift weights Monday, Wednesday, Friday, Sunday evening, a little bit of a pasta dinner before bed can help you. And remember, it has been shown conclusively that eating carbs before bed doesn't cause any more fat gain than eating them in the morning. All right, not one little bit. Timing doesn't matter that much. But if anything, it will help fuel your training the next morning, and it will allow you to get away with eating a smaller morning meal before you go train that morning, right? You don't have as much sitting there in your stomach bogging you down. Post-training, as far as muscle growth goes, getting a decent amount of protein in after you train. And I don't mean you need a protein shake right there in the gym. I'm talking about on your way home from the gym, eating some chicken or some Greek yogurt or kefir or a bunch of beans and pasta, whatever you need to get your protein in. All right? It could be an hour after you train, 2 hours after you train. That's been overhyped due to fasted information out there. All right, these fasted studies are what show you the benefits of this immediate post-workout protein. You're eating before you train, a lot of that goes away. It becomes less important to the point of non-important. Get some decent amount of protein in later. The other thing to look at is glycogen replenishment. But you know what? Carbs immediately post-workout. The level of importance depends on how soon you're going to train again. Are you going to do a cardio session that evening? If you train in the morning or in midday at lunch, and you're going to do some cardio or conditioning work that evening, which is reasonable, getting some decent amount of carbs in between is a good idea. But if you're not, it doesn't matter when you get your carbs in. The main thing is that you get enough carbs to replenish your muscle glycogen between training sessions. And that doesn't matter whether it's cardio coming up, because that's how you prevent some of the protein breakdown people worry about and gains loss from cardio is by eating carbs in between. Getting protein in and carbs to replenish muscle glycogen will preserve muscle mass far more effectively when you do cardio. So if you're going to do cardio that evening, make sure you get a decent amount of carbs in between. All right, your day off from lifting, it doesn't matter so much as long as you get carbs in after your cardio and get enough carbs in the evening before you train the next morning to give you the training fuel that you're going to need, the muscle glycogen you're going to need to perform optimally, and that will let you minimize your food intake that morning so that you only have to eat enough carbs to keep your blood sugar and energy levels up before you lift weights. Because again, eating an enormous breakfast, eating a 1,200 calorie breakfast and going to lift weights can reduce performance somewhat due to blood flow to the stomach. But you don't want to go fasted either, because fasted will also reduce performance. So, trying to get enough carbs the evening before will help. But the thing that you need to remember, the best thing you can do to minimize fat gain is to focus upon quality nutrition to facilitate recovery from training and to facilitate better workouts while in the same caloric intake range. Because if you get better recovery, better workouts, you're going to gain more muscle on the same amount of calories, which means less fat gain. And outside of that, that's really all you can do. If you don't want to gain fat or much fat, don't overeat enough calories to gain a bunch of fat. That's all there is to it. And outside of that, your main focus just needs to be eating to perform and eating to recover. And that means timing matters a little bit, but it's not a huge deal other than making sure you have enough glycogen stores to train on, making sure you get enough protein throughout the day, again, particularly in the few hours after you lift, to facilitate muscle growth, recovery, all of that, and to make sure that you're getting enough quality whole foods in, that you don't have any nutritional deficiencies, which could affect everything from your hormone levels to your recovery. That's all there is to it, brother. All right, guys, but that's really all I have to say on that today. I hope it's been informative, and I will talk to you guys next time.